Hey friends, welcome to Shigaraki. So today we are gonna see, what if Deku was trained by Endeavor? So before we start, I am grateful to the original author for granting us permission to incorporate their work into our video. I am extremely grateful. The description contains the work of the original author. Also check out my Patreon page for 18+ exclusive mature content. We will now proceed to the video. How to Drive Endeavor Insane by Book Princess 32. Alright class, settle down. Shota Aizawa openly yawned. It was Friday and he really wanted this day to end quickly so that he could just go back home and snuggle up into his yellow sleeping bag and forget about the disaster job he calls teaching. Normally, Fridays means 2 days of no classes was on their way. But this is UA, so they do have Saturday classes. Aizawa really wondered what gave Nezu the idea of having classes 6 days a week instead of the usual 5. Almost immediately after Aizawa said the above, the students of Class 1A shut up and sat down. After all, they didn't want to be at the receiving end of his glare, or for him to use his quirk on them. Those eyes that turn red when the quirk was on use was one of the scariest things that they have seen, aside from the villains. Making sure no one was making a single sound, Aizawa continued, "Anyway, I have some important news to share." At that, the students were on edge, literally and figuratively, wondering what Aizawa had in store for them. Whenever he said this, it was usually nothing good. Who could get enthusiastic at whatever Aizawa had to say? Oh, that's right. Midoriya Izuku. In fact, he was almost bouncing out of his seat in excitement. Midoriya Izuku was known by many names. Class 1A, S-Angel, Little Cinnamon Roll, Innocent Green Bean, All-Loving Hero, Bundle of Sunshine, you name it. The person that everyone knew was so pure and so sweet, he can't even say a bad word against anyone. Not even Mineta. The number one hero, Endeavor, is going to come over to our school as a special guest, observing our training regime and lessons. While the class burst into murmurs, Izuku's smile was frozen. Don't get him wrong, he loves heroes, with the exception of Endeavor, after what he did to his own son. A quirk marriage was bad enough, but creating children until they get the perfect quirk? Not accepting that they are perfect as they were? Izuku snuck a look at Todoroki. His face was pale in horror. Izuku knew why. After all, just because he was supposedly a good hero doesn't mean he was a good father. Those two weren't the same thing. Izuku pitied him that he couldn't enjoy his childhood like any normal kid. Izuku inwardly raged with the same sweet smile on his face. He knew there was no way of stopping that number one hero from coming over, save from death. He was one determined guy. If he couldn't stop Endeavor from coming over, he might as well drive him crazy for the week. Saturday afternoon, the sun was shining on the skies. The heavens were in light shade of blue and the clouds were fluffy white. The birds were singing happily in the trees. In short, it was a perfect sunny Saturday. Anyone should be enjoying their time around campus or visiting their families after classes. Well, there was one exception. Izuku smirked to himself as he booted up his laptop. It was good that he built up the image. Otherwise, it won't come in handy for the plans he had next. Izuku reached for a previous volume of his notebook on the table and opened it, reading its contents. More specifically, the profile on Endeavor. Endeavor, the current number one hero. He remembered the teacher saying he was going to come over for the next week as a special guest to oversee their training, whatever that meant. While he wasn't staying over exactly, it means that he would be seen around school for the next week. It shouldn't be too difficult to make a guide. Endeavor was already the subject of much controversy. This was due to the fact that he had an unappealing personality, along with his tendency of destruction, property and innocent people alike. Now Izuku would admit that he did injured innocent people on purpose. It's just that when fighting villains, he sometimes forgot to be aware of the surrounding, and those poor people ended up as collateral. Due to this, most people in Japan were divided on whether to support him despite his achievements being stellar. Besides all these points, Endeavor has the tendency to underestimate those weaker than him in combat. Izuku thought, smiling in a not-so-nice way. But who said anything about defeating him directly? Even if Endeavor wanted to burn him to a crisp, he knew he was on UA campus, so if this was done, he'd be charged with assault on a minor. With that thought in mind, Izuku took the next 2 days to create a notebook, specifically for this guide, taking advantage of every trait Endeavor had. Izuku even took to having his meals at his room for the rest of the weekend, making his classmates wonder what had gotten into their resident green bunny. Some thought he was just excited for the hero to appear on campus. Little did they know, the next week was going to be one hell of a week. A Guide on How to Drive Endeavor Insane by Midoriya Izuku. Monday. Verbal Roasting Tip. There are many ways to set the hot-blooded hero off. Just say what is on your mind and you're good. Roast number 1. Call him Endeavor. One thing Izuku knew was that the first thing Endeavor would do was to visit Principal Nezu. Now, while Principal Nezu was an extremely intelligent and reasonable authority figure in general, Izuku knew that he enjoyed seeing humans suffer sometimes. Although this did not extend to students normally, it came out during the final exam. Izuku still shuddered at the laughter he heard when he destroyed all but one escape route when he was up against Ashido and Kaminari. Izuku concluded he was just slightly insane and unpredictable. Now, because Endeavor's reputation was not exactly wholesome, none of the teachers or students were willing to do so, so Izuku volunteered. To others, it may not be a surprise, since Izuku loved anything and everything about heroes. No one saw his smile turn sinister as he made his way to the office. He knocked on the door, and politely waited for Nezu to say, "Come in," before opening the door. Midoriya, just in time. I trust you have met the #1 pro hero? Nezu grinned. We know each other very well. Endeavor growled, knowing him as his son's opponent in the sports festival. Izuku inwardly smirked. Let's get this started. Oh, I remember, you're Endeavor. Izuku exclaimed, covering his mouth in a gasp. What did you just call me, you brat? Endeavor snarled at Izuku. You wait until I get my hands on. Now, I can't have you threatening my student. Nezu smiled over his cup of tea. He was clearly enjoying this. Midoriya here is very well known for his sweet and honest soul. He would never insult you on purpose. Izuku had a bright smile on his face, and if one looked at him, they would almost see an angelic halo over his head. Roast number 2. Tell him any hero is better than him. Well now, Midoriya, if you please, escort our guest here to his first location. Then you can get back to class. Nezu shooed both of them out. When they left, Endeavor turned to Izuku. If I was a teacher here, I would see you expelled. If you were a teacher here, I'd drop out. Izuku grinned brightly. We already have loads of awesome heroes teaching us. Eraserhead is just your homeroom teacher, and you can't learn much from him. Endeavor scoffed. Imagine what you can learn from a hero like me. You're right, Endeavor, Izuku replied serenely before he could stop himself. Between Eraserhead and you there's not much of a contest. I mean, one of you always almost bore me to tears with your ramblings. Glad you see reason. Endeavor huffed. And the other's Eraserhead, Izuku finished. You little. Izuku ducked as Endeavor exploded, literally and figuratively. Fortunately, the poor vending machines behind them got the brunt of the explosion, and drink burst from all the machines, flooding the entire corridor. Nezu must have heard them, as he ran over quickly. Seeing the scene and the bits of fire flickering, he said, Endeavor, let's talk about the property damage you've done within the first 15 minutes you're here. A spluttering Endeavor was being dragged away, as Izuku took a picture of the damage for his personal collection, and left for his class. Many assumed that he was happy meeting the hero, but Aizawa thought something about his smile seemed scheming. Roast number 3. Tell him that the burning trash actually reminds you of him. During school cleaning time, Izuku offered to take the trash can, and Momo happily gave the roll over. In the corner of his eye, he noticed some of the classmates giving him strange looks. He supposed he was acting strange, considering he started to finish his meals so fast that he quickly left the cafeteria, not sparing any conversation. In reality, he was working on his new project. So far, it was going very well. Honestly, Izuku didn't plan to tell his classmates about it. He didn't really want the whole class to face Endeavor's wrath. Especially his son. If he could carry this out himself without involving anyone, then he will. When he got to the back of the school where the incinerator was, he spotted Endeavor talking to 13 Sensei about something about improving the unforeseen simulation joint. Good afternoon, Endeavor, 13 Sensei. Izuku greeted politely. Endeavor fumed at the nickname, though he said nothing. Oh, thank all might, 13 said. I mean, good to see you, Midoriya. On trash takeout duty today? Of course. Izuku replied enthusiastically. I volunteered to take over today. How sweet. 13 acknowledged, and turned to Endeavor. He's one of the nicest students in the whole of Hero course. Endeavor scoffed in disdain, as Izuku smiled sunnily back. Of course. Endeavor here actually will bring a lot of joy for this week, Izuku answered. I will? Endeavor seemed surprised at the compliment. Yes, when you leave the school. Izuku shrugged, dumping the trash bag into the incinerator. 13 almost burst out laughing as the trash bag inside was set alight without Izuku doing anything. The next thing he said definitely got her bursting out in laughter. You know, Endeavor, that burning trash kind of reminds me of you. Izuku tapped his chin thoughtfully. How? Endeavor snarled. Looks and personality-wise. Izuku grinned cheekily. The incinerator exploded. Luckily, Izuku was already out of range. 13 dragged Endeavor to the office to get Nezu to adjust the damage bills. At least I didn't have to wait until it burns completely. Izuku smirked, having another evidence for his property damage. Roast number 4. Tell him that the dirty dishes look like him. It was after school, and Izuku was washing up the breakfast dishes from the morning. He was alone in the common kitchen, but that was when the entrance door slammed against the wall of the dorm. He snapped towards the loud noise. He plastered on a sweet smile, but inwardly growled at the number 1 hero standing at the door. Apparently, he hadn't gotten a chance to really talk to Todoroki during school times because he was here, ostensibly to check on all the other classes, not just his. Not wanting to give his game away, he was forced to follow Nezu's plan for the day. Apparently, no one said where he was supposed to go after school or he wouldn't be here. Shoto. The flame hero shouted, and Izuku continued scrubbing the dishes. Izuku noted that he seemed to be in a bad mood. While Endeavor normally was level-headed, perhaps this would work in his favor. Let's hope his quirk can save him from the wrath that he was sure to endure next. Realizing he wasn't there, Endeavor turned to the only person in the kitchen. You, where's Shoto? Izuku only said, I am here to wash the dishes, Endeavor. It's Endeavor. Endeavor glared at Izuku, but he did not seem fazed. And I am here to clean up for my classmates, not check on what they do after school. Izuku went on as if he did not hear him. He was hoping the flame hero would say something about it, and he did. Well, you better do a good job, he replied haughtily. You should get those dishes so shiny that I can see my face in them. Picking up a very dirty plate, Izuku retorted in a sweet manner, well, this one looks exactly like you. What did you just say? Endeavor roared, as his quirk's flames shot out, setting the kitchen on fire. Fortunately for Izuku, the flames didn't touch him thanks to his good luck quirk. It also rang the fire alarm, and the sprinklers rained on both of them. The alarm alerted Aizawa to run over, and he sighed at the damage done. Endeavor, this is our dorm, not the Gamma Gym. But, the chit started it. Endeavor pointed at Izuku, who schooled his features into an innocent one. And I love Nomus. Aizawa replied sarcastically. Come, let's adjust the bills you'll have to pay the school for collateral damage. He wrapped his bandages around Endeavor, dragging him to the office again. Izuku got another picture to compute for his file on collateral damage done by Endeavor. Extra note. It would be a bonus if you could get him to cause collateral damage. Tuesday. The little actions tip. The hero gets agitated when the slightest thing seems to be an insult to him, or when something goes wrong. Action number 1. Use his mustache to fry marshmallows. What do you mean I only have 1 day with 1A? Endeavor roared in the office. And that is today. Nezu replied, sipping his tea. Aizawa had specifically requested you to be away, lest you affect his mental health. 1A is quite the class, I would say. All the more for me to be in there, Endeavor insisted. Oh no, you'll only make it worse. Nezu smiled strangely. Now if you have any grievances, you could have just sent me an email. Endeavor was so furious that he didn't realize Izuku was there until he was next to him with a stick and a bag of marshmallows. He was holding one marshmallow on a stick next to his beard to roast them. What are you doing? Endeavor shouted at Izuku, who was offering Nezu a stick. He accepted it with a smile. Well, I was going to see if marshmallows do taste as good when it's burnt with flaming trash. Izuku replied, grinning. How is it, Principal Nezu? The sweetness is gone, for sure, Nezu said, a little jokingly. I overslept and missed breakfast, but I guess it'll do. Izuku held another marshmallow up to his mustache. Endeavor was dumbfounded, frozen as his brain processed what Izuku was doing. His anger erupted and his flames increased in size. It accidentally burnt Izuku, causing him to wince as he dropped his stick. Marshmallows all melted into a sticky, puddly goo. Oh dear, are you all right, Midoriya? Nezu asked. I'm fine, thanks. I didn't even get to taste it, though, he lamented. No worries, Midoriya. They tasted a little like garbage, though what would you expect from Endeavor? Nezu replied, smirking at Endeavor, who spluttered in indigitation. Go to Recovery Girl. I'll write a note to excuse you from classes and send breakfast. Izuku nodded happily, knowing it was his victory although he had a burn on his right forearm. He walked away, trying not to skip happily. Nezu turned to Endeavor. And as for you, it's time to adjust your damage bills. Endeavor was stuck with another damage bill to pay to the school. Action number 2. Replace all the dummies with pictures of Endeavor. Make sure he sees it during training. Izuku whistled, as he carried buckets and buckets of paint to the empty school gym. He had made sure to stay inside the school building when the school locked down for the night. To make sure his classmates do not pry, he sent a text to Iida claiming he wasn't feeling well so he would be sleeping early. That way, Iida would tell the others not to disturb him. But in reality, what he wanted to do was to paint all the dummies into replicas of Endeavor. What is more, the targets that resembled dartboards would have his face on it. Izuku had discovered by accident that One for All could increase his painting speed if he concentrated them on his arms and not use it to smash things. It worked when he was taking notes. If that was the case, he theorized that if he concentrated it on his legs, he could quickly transport the painted dummies back into place before sunrise. He turned on the gym lights, knowing no one was in the school anymore. He then took out the brushes and got to work. Green lightning was seen cackling all over both his arms, as he worked like clockwork. After 6 hours, all of the dummies and dartboards were done. Izuku wiped off flecks of paint from his face, and smiled at his handiwork. He knew that the paint would dry by the time the first class got to their training session. Hopefully they do use the dummies. Later that day, while Izuku was in math class, they heard a shout that was heard in the whole distance. Everyone swore that they heard an explosion as well, similar to the ones Bakugo emitted when he used his quirk. Aizawa, how long do you think it's going to take before Gym Gamma is rebuilt? Midnight asked Aizawa as they looked at the smoking ruins. I'm afraid that Endeavor has to be made to leave before doing that, Aizawa replied, but grinned. Don't worry, we managed to salvage the training dummies. Midnight laughed. Whoever repainted the dummies deserved a gold medal. Action number 3. Spray him continuously with dry ice. Everyone thinks that Izuku only watched hero shows. That was only half true. What he never told them was that he also liked to watch variety shows, where they played games and get sprayed when they make a mistake. There was something educational about it after all. Furthermore, There was something Izuku always laughed at: the people getting sprayed by the dry ice from the containers. Especially when they are completely covered by the white cloud. Sometimes, the hats they wore also got sprayed, or it messed up their hair. Having watched these kinds of shows, Izuku wondered if the containers were remote-controlled, considering there were occasions where the hosts talked to the behind-the-scenes people with all these controls that presumably controlled the spray. When he researched it, he realized what they sprayed was dry ice. No wonder some contestants complained about it being cold when sprayed. This inspired him to make a new prank on Endeavor. So, way early in the morning, which meant he never slept at all since was at school the whole night, he had set up a large amount of gray fire extinguisher-like containers hidden around the doorway of his own class. It was concealed thanks to some support device Hatsume made based on Hagakuri's quirk. It was a good way to test it too. All he needed to do was wait for the right moment. He skipped back to class, and sat in his seat. The remote to set off everything was in his hand, with the other hand ready to film Endeavor's reaction. Just as Endeavor stormed into his class, Izuku slammed down on the button. It set off the entire trap, covering Endeavor in a cold white cloud. As it was a continuous blast, it was a few minutes before it cleared, revealing Endeavor without his flames on. The class started laughing at that, including Todoroki, who did not bother to conceal his grin. Endeavor stomped and shouted for the culprit to admit their wrongdoing, throwing a tantrum as the class continued to laugh. Izuku merely gave what some may think was a pitying smile, but it was actually a smirk knowing he succeeded. Aizawa sighed, and commented, "I'm sure someone is sending you a sign for you to cool off." Even he looked amused. "I'm glad it's a success too. Now get out." He pushed Endeavor out, slamming the door in his face. Action number 4. Lock him out of the school. Izuku knew that the school has a security barrier thing for a reason. Only students and teachers can constantly pass the barrier with their special IDs. As for visitors, they were issued a pass that would only work once a day. Once they get out, it is assumed they were done with whatever they were here for and they could not go back in. So, Izuku is going to make sure that Endeavor is going to complete all his agenda before that, right? Wrong. He was going to make sure that he got locked out before the training session with Class 1A. Now, how was he going to go about with this? Well, it would involve Hatsume Mei and her babies, again, as she calls her inventions. So during lunch, Izuku paid the support department workshop a visit. "A device to control holograms, you say?" Mei said excitedly. "Yeah. You're excellent in making these kinds of stuff, right?" Izuku smiled. "Like for deception during stealth missions." Hum. Mei nodded enthusiastically. "I'm pretty sure I have one somewhere around here." She walked over to her shelves of devices. "Let's see, hologram, Mei hummed. "It should be around, here it is." Mei handed Izuku what looked like a helmet, with slits on it. "Here you go." Mei chirped. "It's my hologram helmet. It reads your brainwaves to create the image you want. Use your concentration to manipulate said image with your brain. Be careful, since the battery runs out pretty quickly." "Thanks a bunch, Hatsume-san." Izuku grinned. "I'll return it after school latest." Heh. Good luck." Hatsume grinned. Izuku smiled, device in hand. He had the perfect plan in mind. The thing was, he was aware of how Endeavor treated Todoroki, and was always constantly hounding him on his training. While Izuku admitted he was normally an intelligent hero, Izuku figured that when it came to his family, he let his drive for power get in the way of rationale thinking. Such as molding his son to beat All Might, for instance. If he saw Todoroki seemingly skipping classes, especially during the afternoon ones since that was when heroics classes usually happened, he would definitely chase him down for answers. Now, to look for the star of the show. He was lucky, as the said person was on the way to the cafeteria, no doubt to look for his son. He wore the helmet, and created the hologram of Todoroki, making the hologram run past him. Sure enough, the flame hero shouted, "Shoto! What are you doing? Lunch is almost over." Izuku made the hologram ignore him, and Endeavor growled, thinking his son was defying him as usual. He chased the hologram all the way out the school. The gate closed. Izuku took out the helmet, dispelling the hologram. What the? Endeavor looked at the hologram, which vanished. Hey! Let me in. His noises were enough to attract the attention of Nezu, who happened to be out strolling. Now, what seems to be the matter? Nezu asked calmly. I've been locked out of the school. I demand you let me back in at once, Endeavor yelled, banging on the gate. Well, you may as well take that time to pay up all your outstanding bills you racked up. Nezu shrugged. I did warn you to be careful of when you go out. Just come back tomorrow with the money. What? I wouldn't be able to oversee Class 1A's heroics classes, Endeavor protested. Don't worry, we will send pictures and videos. I am sure it would be enlightening. Nezu smirked, knowing that the dummies and dartboards were painted over with pictures of Endeavor. He had to thank whoever had the foresight to do so. While Endeavor continued to scream in fury, he didn't notice how Izuku was hiding in the corner. He had recorded every second of Endeavor's embarrassing actions. Right now, he was trying his best to not burst out in laughter, so that Endeavor wouldn't find out just who was behind the fact that he was locked out of school. How was the invention? May had asked later. Oh, it was excellent. Endahor particularly enjoyed it, Izuku smirked. Extra note. If you somehow kept him away from Class 1A, especially from a certain Todoroki, even better. Wednesday. Essay writing tip. If you are forced to write an essay about him, you may as well roast him in writing, with evidence, of course. Aizawa sighed during class in the morning. I'll be sending you essays. It would be due tonight. Email your essays to me by 11:59 p.m. The class groaned, knowing they would have to spend after school trying to do this essay. Turning his back towards the class, Aizawa picked up a piece of chalk and wrote down the instructions. Each of you would be writing about the pro-hero Endeavor. The class groaned again. Izuku wanted to join them, but that would seem suspicious. He just knew Endeavor had something to do about it. Perhaps to feed his ego or something. I expect citations with your research too. I don't want some biased opinions. Aizawa went on. His gaze landed on the green-haired and green-eyed student. I'll give you the handouts regarding the marking scheme I'll be using. As for the top 5 students of the class, his eyes flitted from Yaoyorozu to Iida to Bakugo to Midoriya to Todoroki as he gave out the details of the assignment. You will have a higher bar to meet, please don't disappoint me. The rest of you, your requirements are easier. What approach are we supposed to use, sensei? Momo questioned. Aizawa knew Endeavor would only allow positive things about him, but he failed to mention this, so he decided that they could write anything they wanted. He might need the amusement after all. You can go for any angle of the essay, as long as you are talking about that guy. You can use any source, as long as it's legitimate. That means no Wikipedia. 2 groans from the 2 dead last students could be heard, as they buried their heads in their hands. Once he finished distributing the handouts, he went to leave only to stop and glare once more at his group of troublemakers. And no, you cannot take Midoriya's notebooks. Do your own research. Izuku tuned out the collective groans from half the class. He stopped listening after he heard Aizawa say he could use any approach to the essay. Looks like he would have to spend the rest of his free time borrowing material in the library. Later after school, Izuku's desk was cluttered with newspaper articles, interview transcripts, and his notes taken from videos, as he wrote the essay on Endeavor. From the way he worked, one might think he was working on a college thesis, not a simple high school essay. Endeavor. How not to be a hero due to the recent loss of All Might after the battle with All for One. The former number 2, Todoroki Enji, took the place at default. Admittedly, while he is a powerful hero with the abilities to back it up, the same cannot be said for his personality. Unfortunately for Japan, he had no concern for anything at all, other than to keep up his strong image out of his own overwhelming arrogance and supreme ego. With his new status, he possibly and probably tainted the definition on what it means to be a hero. Furthermore, he may also have ruined what All Might had tried to instill in young minds on what a true hero should be like. Based on the above points, this begs the following question. Does he actually deserve his title as a true pro-hero? This essay will provide the reasons of why the answer is no. I should start off with his struggle to become number one. After all, everyone knows how much he covets that position, until it was handed over when he retired. Izuku thought. I do have plenty I want to say about that sports festival. Sources reveal that in Endeavor's attempts to get the number one spot and subsequent failures prior to All Might's requirement, was forced upon his youngest son, Todoroki Shoto. The youngest son himself was adverse in using the side of the quirk he perceived as his father's until the end of the UA Sports Festival months ago. During this event, President Mike outright stated that Endeavor was, and I quote, a doting father, which is completely far from the truth. I have encountered Endeavor during the event. His words to me was, it is my Shoto's duty to suppress All Might. His match with you will be a very instructive testbed. At that moment, I knew he was only thinking about what he wanted from his own son, not what his own son actually wanted. He placed all his failed hopes and dreams on someone who did not want the burden. President Mike's mistake was to call him a doting father in public. In truth, he was a neglectful parent at best and abusive at worst. Moreover, his unhealthy commitment with beating All Might, the then number one hero, destroyed his family. Izuku whistled away as he kept typing. At one point, he knew he should move on to the damages. He grimaced, remembering the property damage Endeavor had caused on Monday. He turned to the article stating that, and calculated the amount of money it would have cost today. He also went as far as to research the injuries that people sustain and how long they would take to heal just to calculate the medical bills. As an alumnus of UA, it is presumed that he had been taught the basic ethics that are crucial to have a professional hero career. One of them was the reminder to do whatever it takes to minimize structural damage or civilian causalities at all times. However, in the case of Endeavor, he was either sleeping during those lectures or he simply disregarded them in favor of the practical training lessons like the heroics class. Around 98% of the crime scene that have property damage, injured, dead civilians or both had him involved. In fact, public records have stated that throughout his career, he has racked up billions of yen in collateral damage. Last year, based on the list of property damage and the number of innocent civilians sent to the hospital for varying degree burns, he had racked up 92,975,400,000 yen in terms of collateral damage. In fact, during the first day of visiting UA High, he had already caused some property damage in school out of anger, and was witnessed by a student and 3 of the UA staff members. This means that throughout his 25-year reign as the number 2 hero, it has become apparent that he puts so much priority to defeating the villains that he forgets to look out for the surroundings or the innocent people who happen to be there. Endeavor's actions are comparable to my childhood friend Bakugo when he first received his explosion quirk and constantly tested his quirk on living beings. Both of them also did not have the care of what it could mean to the victims or the consequences they could have faced. Well, it's not as if Kachan would read that essay. Izuku saw no harm in adding that detail. He is a bully, after all. And noted that that statement could apply to both of them. He whistled as he continued typing. The amount of arrogance, pride, and glory-hounding that he has is so astronomical that it is impossible to be measured by any unit measurements known to the human race. In the process, he destroyed his family and the lives of innocent civilians he was supposed to protect. In fact, he had already caused a lot of trouble during his visit to UA High. Izuku stretched his fingers, ready to write the conclusion. To sum up, while Endeavor is prepared for the perks and publicity of being the number 1 hero, he is certainly not prepared for the responsibility that comes with it. He will never be ready for the responsibility. That is unless he can somehow get his head out of his ass and be mature enough to throw away his bruised ego from not earning his title via beating All Might. His new status as the society's symbol of hope has also brought concern, considering his violent nature with petty matters and his lack of concern for the public's safety. Due to this, I think that the hero killer Stain had a point which still remains completely accurate in present day. Endeavor is the epitome of everything that a hero should not be. He is, to quote Stain's words, a fake hero. There should not be any dispute on whether he is a good hero or not among the public, because he's not a good hero at all. As a hopeful hero in training, maybe someone should knock this hazard off his pedestal, or one of the villains should send him to early retirement, because it would not only be good for him, it would be good for everyone else in Japan, and the world for the matter. And sent. Izuku emailed the essay to Aizawa-sensei after finishing it. He then checked the TME, and realized he sent the essay just 2 minutes before midnight. He yawned, as he cleaned up his room of the clutter. His stomach growled, making him realize he missed dinner. Might as well just go downstairs for a snack or something, Izuku thought, getting up and shuffling to the stairs. Maybe he could grab a few protein bars to bring to school so he didn't have to go to the cafeteria. Meanwhile, at the staff room, Aizawa inwardly cursed at Endeavor, as he sat down with a cup of coffee, ready to mark the essays. He swore with that ego of his, one of these days, Endeavor would be forced to early retirement or something. He'll laugh when the day comes. When he accessed his emails, he saw that Izuku's essay reached to a whopping 16 pages. He groaned, deciding to leave it for last. Problem Child probably sang so much praises for the man, since Izuku was a fanboy for all pro heroes. Sure enough, most of the essays were somewhat positive, likely afraid of what the pro hero could do to them. The exception was Todoroki, who tried to be objective without looking like he was openly despising his father. It was clear Todoroki was struggling to find any positive traits of his father. Aizawa couldn't fault him. Finally, he turned to Izuku's essay, and opened it, dreading the praises that the boy may sing about him. Aizawa started to view its contents, wondering what Izuku was going to write. He spat out his coffee when he read the title. Soon the staff room was filled with Aizawa's laughter. He was so glad he'll be the one marking it. He couldn't wait to see the look on Endeavor's face when he was emailed the best essay. The next day during homeroom, Aizawa-sensei informed the class that he had sent them their marks through email, along with the feedback. And one of you got a 100. Congratulations, Aizawa said monotonously. Just then, the door burst open, and an angry Endahor stormed in, waving the copy of the essay that Aizawa had emailed. In his anger, he had burnt some parts of it. What is the meaning of this? Endeavor roared. How dare you let your students spread slander about me? The class looked at one another, wondering who was that bold to submit that kind of essay. They missed Izuku, who gave a bright smile. Aizawa sighed at Endeavor. You said to submit the best essay, and I did. What's the problem? How could you let your students cast aspersions on me? Endeavor yelled on, his flames busting into overdrive. Only for Aizawa to deactivate it using his quirk. Don't use such a strong word. Aspersions implies that the person is out to attack your reputation via false accusations. Aizawa glared. So, you're telling me they're false? Of course they're false. I see, I'll have to take a look at his citations then. All of the sources used seemed legitimate. Aizawa seemed nonplussed. Especially the videos he sent me. He showed one of Endeavor yelling at the gate to Nezu, who was unfazed. The class couldn't see what was in the video, but they clearly heard Endeavor's yelling in it. There was a shout of pure, inarticulate rage that made everyone duck to avoid the firepower. Izuku was covering his mouth, shaking with laughter. Haven't you broken enough stuff already? Aizawa said coldly. Those desks aren't cheap, you know. I'm going to send you a bill for that. Endeavor roared. How could you give full marks to this preposterous rubbish? I like the essay, that's why. Aizawa shrugged. The brat who wrote the essay should be expelled, Endeavor howled, turning to glare at Izuku. I don't expel students with potential. Now get out. You're wasting my class time, Aizawa countered. Endeavor stormed out, knowing that he couldn't argue with Aizawa, as he was as stubborn as a mule. As he walked out, Aizawa calmly said, and I will also charge you for the door damage. As he turned back to the class, Aizawa simply stated monotonously, don't worry. He's mad because I distributed the copies of the best essay to the other teachers. He then took a well-deserved nap in his yellow sleeping bag. In reality, he was going to reread a certain green-haired student's essay. Extra note. It would be a bonus if your teacher distributes the copies of the essays to his fellow staff. Thursday. Radio show's tip. Join Present Mike's radio show and roast him to your heart's content. The class knew something was weird the moment Endeavor was storming in, all mad about the best essay. What was stranger was that apparently, the writer of the essay was their resident cinnamon bun, if Endeavor's glare was anything to go by. Someone who couldn't say a bad word against anyone. Another sign that something was up was when the bell rang for lunch. Present Mike had asked their resident green bunny to stay back. The class looked at one another, as they were forced to leave for lunch. This was because Present Mike refused to say anything. Until they were alone. "What is it, Yamada-sensei?" Izuku asked, his head tilted in curiosity. "You are never going to guess who I am going to have for my show tonight. A breakout, budding and never-before-seen hero who will bring down the house," Present Mike announced. So it's not All Might," Izuku guessed. "What? No, he's been on, like, a million times already." Present Mike waved dismissively. "Technically it's only 35 times," Izuku said, noting he had listened to every single interview. "Is it Lemillion? I mean, you did mention a breakout, budding character." "No," Present Mike yelled, face-palming. "Oh, I know. Mount Lady then? The newcomer?" Izuku suggested. "No, she has been on the show before." Mike shook his head. "You're so dense. It's going to be you, kid." Silence reigned, and Izuku yelled, "Wait, why me? After reading your essay, I think I just got what I need to get the audience's attention," Present Mike announced. "Great job on the essay, lil listener. I enjoyed every word of it." "You want me to bring my roast list to your radio show?" Izuku was baffled. "Why, of course. I would love the person who was tormenting Endeavor for the past few days in my show." Present Mike grinned. "It's not gossip if all of it is true." Izuku expected the teachers knew by now. Nothing ever got past them, after all. It might work to his advantage, however. "Well, I made a list that was purely roasting him based on the evidence that I have unearthed on his actions. I never thought I would have needed it, but I could use that," Izuku suggested. "All right. I look forward to having you on tonight," Present Mike clapped him on his back. That night, the class sat in the common room, feeling restless. They had been feeling this since they found out Izuku might have been up to something. Now that they thought of it, ever since the announcement of Todoroki Enji's visit to the school, they now only saw him during meal times and class times. Even during meals, Izuku had either took his meals to the room, or finished so fast and rushed off somewhere. They wondered what their class angel was up to, as they did not see him come back to the dorms either. Some of them watched television listlessly, and Ashido was absent-mindedly twiddling the dials of the radio. She stumbled upon Present Mike's channel. "Hello, my wonderful listeners. Are you out enjoying a good time in town? Or relaxing in bed at home? Well, no matter, because you are all tuning in to my channel. I am going to do something different for a change, because tonight, I have a cute little bunny you'd be gushing over if you could see his face, but you'll just have to settle for his adorable and bright voice. Let's get this party started. YEHHHHHHH. Wonder what he's up to," Momo said, taking a sip of her tea. "Give it up for Midoriya Izuku." Momo promptly spat it out, which was quite undignified for her usual personality. The moment the class heard his name, they quickly ran to gather around the radio. Hello, everyone. I'm really glad to be on the show. Thanks Present Mike, for having me," Izuku said shyly. "You're a devoted listener to my radio show, right Midoriya?" "Of course." Izuku's voice chirped. "I've been a fan since I was a kid." "O' course you are. You're one of my favorite fans, if I do say so myself. Anyway, for those wondering why he is on tonight, he has made quite the name among the UA staff after an essay that basically made me realize my mistake of calling our beloved hero a doting dad. I am sure our listeners out there would love to hear what points you have, Midoriya. Well, but I don't think anyone would want to listen. I'd never intended to. His face is all red, folks. I'd say he looks adorable, but you can't see him. Don't worry, my favorite listener, we've got all night. Thanks. Izuku stuttered. Moving to the main point. I know our listeners from all over Japan are just dying to hear more about your thoughts on Endeavor. Why don't you tell the listeners what points you have made on the essay that we teachers enjoyed? The class was hushed, leaning towards the radio, as Izuku started to recite his points and roasts. I'm killing Deku for not including us. Bakugo neatly summed up the class thoughts, though all of them were amused by his roasts. Meanwhile, Present Mike grinned in his recording booth as he received all these positive comments on his online website. This is the best reception I've ever received. Present Mike laughed. You're a goldmine, little listener. Somewhere in a hideout, Dobby laughed as he listened to a certain channel on the radio. Extra note. If people love it, even better, it would be good for future plans. Friday. UA's funniest school videos tip. Who doesn't love the old classics? Make a fail compilation for the school. Really? You said you want the video footage of Endeavor's misadventures. Nezu said to Izuku. He had visited Nezu after the radio show, telling him of his request. What do you need it for? Although Nezu already knew his intentions due to that essay that Izuku had written, it had given him some new insights on the #1 hero. He was only asking for courtesy purposes. It's for a project. For the sake of Japan's future, I was hoping we would get it to prove that Endeavor indeed do not deserve his title. And aspiring heroes should not look to him as a guidance as how heroes should conduct themselves. Izuku replied smoothly. In return, you can have all my notebooks for review, and a copy of what I did with the footage, if you wish. He knew Nezu would not say no to that, especially since Midoriya was one of the brightest students in his class. What was more, his notes were useful for training regimes if used correctly. Nezu nodded. Of course, Midoriya. You can retrieve the footage. I look forward to seeing what you can do with them. Bring those notebooks tomorrow morning. Izuku clapped his hands together and said, Thank you, Principal Nezu, and sat in front of the computer to access the footages. Some of them he had already filmed for his personal collection, but others such as the training for the other classes, he could not get them. He couldn't help but think about the way Endeavor was behaving in the school. Not only did it bother him, it often caused problems for other people as well. The hero worshipper found himself having to shake his head at his immaturity, where Endeavor racked up a bill for the damages he caused. To say the least, he did not expect this from a pro hero. Then again, it's Endeavor. What else would he have expected? While waiting, Principal Nezu sat on the chair, sipping his tea as laughter came out of the tablet. What's that, Principal Nezu? Izuku had questioned. Oh well, after Endeavor's visit, I figure I needed more than one good laugh. Nezu smiled in his tea. It's a popular series called Musudafu's Funniest Home Videos. Ever heard of it? Not really. Izuku shook his head. Well, that's a shame. It's on HeroTube, so do check it out anytime. People send in humorous homemade videos to this show all the time. It's good entertainment. Nezu snickered slightly, as he watched a priest's hair get caught on fire. Like a fail compilation, so to speak. Izuku frowned. It sounded a lot like Endeavor's actions in school lately, as he continued to browse through all the ones that involved Endeavor somehow embarrassing himself. He then compiled all of them into a CD, and a thumb drive just in case. It compiled 2 hours of footage as a result. As he walked back to the dorm, he took out his phone and searched up HeroTube to watch what Principal Nezu recommended. As he watched the fails, he muttered, so I would have to see when the next submissions are. Endeavor is quite the formidable opponent, so the way to go about this is to go bigger. If I didn't know better, I'd say he was hinting at me making a submission for the show. But how should I actually use the footage? Izuku had set up the laptop, and plugged in the thumb drive, watching the videos he compiled. Doria. A voice stated. When it comes to humor, something new is always good. Damaged property is kind of common in that show. Izuku kept mumbling. That means I would have to look at the ones where he was throwing a tantrum over something small, that resulted in Midoriya. A voice said, louder this time. I don't care about the prize money, but I don't think they'll accept hours of footage. Or should I make a film? How should I start with this? Maybe I can try the being sprayed incident and all. Or locked out of school. Oh wait, what about him storming around looking for his son? I can incriminate him and make a comedy out of that. Hopefully I don't involve anyone because it is a bad thing that I am doing this to someone who is supposed to be a hero, but he is a terrible Midoriya. A voice barked, and Izuku jumped and looked up. Oh, hi, Todoroki-kun, Izuku said, waving. He slammed his laptop shut. Good morning, Midoriya. Todoroki frowned at him, along with the rest of the class, who were all in pajamas. Well, with the exception of Mineta, but Izuku suspected he was taped up somewhere with Zero's tape. It seemed that they couldn't keep their noses out of his business, and it seemed like they found an opportunity to have a word with him thanks to Shoji. I've been trying to call you 3 times. Sorry, did you guys need something? Izuku asked, scratching his cheek. We haven't seen you these past few days, Deku. Uraraka stated, worried. She looked like she genuinely missed him. You see me in class. Izuku waved her off, blushing red. You know what we mean, Midoriya-kun. Iida folded his arms. We're all concerned about you. As class representative, I cannot let this stand. Todoroki narrowed his eyes, not liking how Izuku was running off somewhere. He never even finished his meals with them anymore. Was he trying to imitate pre-sports festival him or something? You've been acting incredibly strange lately, he stated bluntly. I'm just busy with something. Izuku averted his eyes. The last thing he needed was to involve any of his classmates in his schemes. Really, Midoriya-chan? Tsuyu titled her head. Does it have to do with that flame hero, Ribbit? I mean, we did hear that radio channel. Everyone's eyes landed on the laptop Midoriya was subtly trying to hide from his sight. A personal project. Izuku answered, not elaborating, and yeah, it does, but. Give it here, Deku. Bakugo demanded, holding a hand out. He was sleepy and cranky, making Izuku jump at his tone. See you at breakfast. Izuku stuffed the remaining power bar in his mouth and rushed off to his dorm. But Todoroki was faster. He grabbed the laptop swiftly as the rest of the class gathered around him to see what he was up to. I'm sorry, Izuku said, reaching out to grab it. Izuku was held by some of his classmates while Todoroki stepped away from his reach, narrowing his eyes at the contents as he pressed play. The footage started playing. Some of the taller ones, like Zero and Shoji, started snickering at the contents, while the shorter ones like Ashido was trying to tiptoe to see what they were watching. Oh, all those fails. PFFT, Ojiro was covering his mouth with his tail. So all those things that happened to my father, it was you. Todoroki realized. I know, it's so disrespectful and I know that but I don't like him, alright? I don't mean any harm, I just want to see him suffer a little bit. I'm not saying Todoroki's dad is a villain or anything, even though he might as well be one. I know, I'm going too far, but, Izuku started rambling. He closed his eyes and raised both arms to shield himself from whatever came next. You may not like him either from what you said, but if this is too far, I understand, Izuku went on. Why didn't you invite us? Todoroki's voice cut through his ramblings. Izuku peeked through his raised arms incredulously at the other boy. What? No fair. You get to do something so fun without inviting us? Kaminari pouted. Well, I didn't want Endeavor to focus his wrath on you guys. Izuku was poking his index fingers together. So I figured I'd do this myself. Mon Cherie, if you think we don't want in, you're absolutely wrong. Aoyama cut in. Aoyama's right. Not telling was pretty much the pinnacle of stupidity. Tokiyami added. We're all in this together, you know, Juru agreed. If you hate Endev. Shish. Izuku hushed her. Never say that man's name. It's a curse. What should we call him? Ashido was curious. I personally call him Endahor, Izuku admitted, and some snickered. So, let's hate him together, Hagakure cheered, and everyone agreed. You guys, Izuku couldn't believe the class of 1A were so willing to be at risk of his wrath with him out of the kindness of their hearts. He could feel the tears welling up in his eyes. I don't know how to thank you. Oh no, we should thank you. You've been doing all these by yourself. It's manly, Kirishima gushed, pointing to the videos, which some were caused by him. Who knew our little cinnamon roll can do this much damage? Yaoyorozu smiled serenely. What's the next step of the plan? Iida knew there was no talking them out. Well, Izuku was scratching his head. I was going to review the footage and see what I could use. Either make a film, or send it to the Musudafu's funniest home videos, whichever came first. Oh, let's watch it together, Uraraka suggested. Do you have a CD version? Sure do. Izuku held out the CD, and it was snatched, and placed into the CD player. Izuku found himself sandwiched between Todoroki and Iida. Todoroki had an arm around his shoulder, as if to prevent him from escape. As soon as the first footage played, everyone was laughing their heads off. The laughter increased the longer the CD was played, and some of them practically could not breathe. Even Dark Shadow seemed to have a good time at Endahor's expense. Oh man, those videos are too good not to exclude, Kaminari wheezed, when the video compilation ended. I can't believe you said all those to him, Sato guffawed. Who knew you were such a savage? We can't send all of them to a show, though, Juru was thoughtful. Who said we need to? Ribbit. Suyu added. We can compile this in a film, get the whole school to watch in the pretense of letting the school be aware of the #1 hero, Ribbit. That's a great idea, Ashido clapped. When are we going to start? Aoyama wondered. Now, when else? Bakugo barked. Deku, give me your laptop. He did not wait for Izuku's acceptance, and snatched the laptop. The others were gathered around the laptop, pitching in to help with the editing. Hey, wait, Izuku started, but was held back by Todoroki. Don't worry, you've done enough providing the footage. Let them do the rest, he assured. I can see why President Mike asked you to star in his radio show, Hagakure giggled. This is glorious. We should try to implement some of Izuku's analysis points in the film, Ojiro Hamed. Isn't this supposed to be a comedy film? Siro questioned. Roasting Endahor is comedy. Todoroki spoke up, as he made Izuku send the videos he filmed for his personal collection. We might be able to reuse some points from President Mike's radio show, and then some. For the rest of the night, the entire class worked hard on producing the ultimately 2-hour film of Endahor's failed compilation and a roasting analysis on why he should not be a hero based on these footages alone, along with the lines recorded by Izuku. Izuku had used some of his lines that he used for the essay. Yaoyorozu and Iida took over at the editing stage, with some input from Juru, who have produced her own music videos, mostly cover songs, before. When everything was ready, the film was burned to a CD, which Izuku planned to give to Nezu for a laugh. They also decided to just refresh themselves and make breakfast to go to school, since it was too late to go back to bed. But, as Bakugo put it, fucking worth it. Of course, they weren't expecting what Nezu would do when he received the film from Izuku, along with his notebooks. Later, the lessons for the students of UA had been abruptly interrupted for a large-scale assembly in the auditorium. As the classes filed in one by one, their attention was captured by the podium, and behind the podium was a screen that had been set up specifically for this event. Izuku moved to sit with Iida and Uraraka, only to be shoved down by someone. He then found himself between Todoroki and Yaoyorozu instead. Once all the students had been seated and quietened down, Nezu had stepped up to the podium with a large smile on his face. Good morning to all the students. I apologize profusely for interrupting your studies. As a tribute to our beloved guest, I want to personally introduce this film, as it brought great joy to me and the rest of the Teachers. He glanced to the rest of the teachers, who were snickering. Endeavor huffed at their laughter, wondering what was to funny. This was sent to us by an anonymous fan, and I hope you and our esteemed guest would find their work as enjoyable as we did. Without further ado, let the film begin. The film started with a goofy theme playing, causing Izuku to grin. He just knew what Nezu was planning. It was a modified theme of the show, Musudafu's Funniest Home Videos. Class 1A started stifling their giggles in their hands, knowing that it was their film. Izuku quickly took out his phone to film Endeavor, who was wide open in shock when he saw his name and the title appearing. UA's Funniest School Videos. Endahor edition featuring Why He Should Not Be a Hero. Everyone watched as the movie started with the very first recordings of Endeavor. Each of them was accompanied with Izuku's analysis of his actions. The intimidation of Izuku while he was washing dishes, which ended with Aizawa dragging him off for damaged property, yelling of the essay that was written, him trying to play the part of someone that knew best, everything the Izuku had compiled and brief snippets of the essay Izuku had written. "Hey, I did not authorize this," Endeavor roared, trying to get up and eject the CD, only for Aizawa to hold him back. "If you do that, you'll only prove them right," 13 pointed out, coughing lightly with a smile. I, Endeavor spluttered angrily, but sat back down. The next footage had Class 1A using the Endeavor dummies to their heart's content. Todoroki in particular took great pleasure in burning the dummies with his father's face on it. "I am being insulted," Endeavor yelled, pointing at the movie. "Can't you see it?" "Now, where did you get the idea?" Midnight shrugged. "Maybe they loved you so much they want you to see you all the time." Just then, the narrator said, "It is no wonder that everyone thinks he is a piece of flaming garbage. I will not stand for this bullshit." Endeavor's flames were practically destroying the teacher's section, as his anger was beyond his usual level. However, none of the students were fazed being engrossed in the movie. He looked around with anger as all the students and staff were laughing at the antics of him on the screen, along with the roasting analysis. "Nezu, learn to control your students or else." "Or else what? You'll damage more property," Vlad King snarked. "We can just send you the bills. If you refuse to pay, we will sue. We do have proof you're the one who did it with the movie, you know," Present Mike added. "ARRRRGGGGHHHH. With that, the flame hero stormed off, possibly leaving the campus for the horrible defamation that was being made to his proper image as a hero, with intense laughter in his wake. The movie ended shortly after Endeavor rage quitted. "I am very glad to see that you all enjoyed that film as much as we did," Nezu said to the audience, taking the podium once more. "The film also serves as a leaning point. This is not how you should behave as a hero." Murmurs of agreement was heard. Nezu coughed, and went on, "This film was by far the best homemade films I have ever seen. Please thank Class 1A for the wonderful movie." Everyone in the audience started to applaud the class, as they stood up and took a bow. Izuku grinned. All the work he had done had been worth it all in the end. The preparation of equipment, prior planning, subtle use of his original quirk and the class editing the footages for hours. It had all been worth it, especially the reactions he had filmed on his phone. Now, if anyone wants a copy of the full analysis that was said in the film, I am selling copies of the essay written by none other than Midoriya Izuku, electronic and hard copy. One copy is sold for 1,170 yen. See Aizawa for details. Nezu smiled, waving his own printed copy of the essay. Izuku gulped, looking to Bakugo, as he, like most others around, started counting their pocket money, clearly wanting to buy the essay. He knew Bakugo wouldn't be happy if he knew exactly what he wrote inside. Somewhere in the League of Villains' lair, Dabi logged into Hero Tube, wondering what he would find today. When he saw the video labeled, "Preview of UA's Funniest Home Videos Compilation," he had to take a few minutes just to stop laughing too hard. Once he had though, he opened the video and watched the footages, and had to sit down so he wouldn't fall over from cackling. Then, he noticed a few links in the comments selling the essay and a petition for the movie to be sold to public. He immediately ordered the copy and signed the petition. Back in UA, Izuku was seen running from one angry, red-eyed blonde Pomeranian, but was saved by a block of ice. Extra note: before carrying out this step, make sure you prepare defenses against one furious Bakugo, or have a Todoroki to protect you. Bonus +1 Saturday. Tip: your father wants you to crush the legacy of All Might? Then admit your crush on him. Todoroki Shoto was clenching his fist in anger at the messages sent to him. The first was from Yorashi Inasa, who had seen the viral video of the footages that was filmed on Izuku's phone. Juru had suggested that Izuku post those footages that he had filmed for his personal collection as a teaser of sorts to the movie they made. UA had agreed that it would make for good promotional material. Izuku, after some hesitation, agreed. It gained around 3 million views, and gained Izuku loads of fans after that, along with special award for services to the school by Nezu. Yorashi. Hey, Todoroki, was he the green-haired guy from the Provisional Hero License exam? He really did Endahor a great blow to his representative. I'd marry him in an instant. Todoroki gritted his teeth. How could he just say that? He didn't even know Midoriya as well as he did. The second was from his brother, Natsuo. Natsuo. Wow, little bro, father's best roaster is really cute. If you don't date him, I will. Todoroki scoffed. Like hell Midoriya would go for someone that old. There was no way Todoroki would let any of them get to the precious cinnamon roll, because Midoriya was his. Well, not yet, at least. It wasn't really a secret that he was harboring feelings for a certain bundle of green sunshine, which turned out to be more than meets the eye. In fact, he was surprised when Izuku admitted that he had been planning this for him when he heard of it to make his life easier. For that, he was grateful, but Izuku had said, anything for my best friend. Yup. Midoriya wasn't aware of his feelings towards him. Todoroki knew he had to wait for the perfect moment, and it reached him when one Saturday morning. Izuku was in a good mood. He had gathered all the evidence against Endeavor, and was going to plan a posting of it all over the popular hero forums. Well, that could wait, though. He was on the way to his classroom when he heard a door to the Nezu's office slam. He turned to see the hulking figure of the #1 hero, clearly fuming about something. The fire hero turned and saw him, and stormed up to the boy. You, he yelled. He just knew Izuku was the cause of everything going wrong. Now, normally a typical brat would have run at the tone. Not Izuku, though. He simply stood his ground firmly. I thought they have taken the burning trash out already. Izuku smirked lazily. But I guess they didn't since you're here. Endeavor's face was blank. That quickly turned into one full of rage as he screamed, "What the hell did you just say, you insolent rascal? I'm pretty sure you heard me. Are you going senile, or what?" Izuku spat. Endeavor blew up. You useless little. Yes, yes. Izuku did not even bother putting up a sweet facade. The man who thinks that he knows best for his youngest son. Let me guess, you're going to tell him that you would not allow him to hang around the likes of me, and you have decided that he'll marry a girl with a good quirk and from a prestigious family. Unknown to either of them, Class 1A and Aizawa had heard the yells from their classroom, and made their way towards the pair. They had caught the last bit said by Izuku. And he will listen, if he knows what's best. Endeavor's voice was cold. He waved like Endeavor was just some boring fly. Let me count how many fucks I give about that. He started looking at the ceiling and counted. 1, 1.5, oh, they all flew away. His eyes held Endeavor's as he remained silent. It was clear what he said was the last straw. However, as we all know, actions spoke louder than words. His hand rose in the air, and Izuku's trained reflexes allowed him to automatically grab hold of it as it swung down. It wasn't enough, however, as the flame hero managed to lift his arm, lifting Izuku along with it thanks to their drastic height difference. He then swung Izuku off, sending him flying. Izuku widened his eyes, as he tried utilizing his good luck quirk for a soft landing. He was caught by one Todoroki Shoto, and he landed in his arms in a bridal-style carry. "Thanks, Todoroki-kun." Izuku grinned. However, Todoroki was glaring at his father, who was tied in bandages by Aizawa. "Hey, Endeavor!" Todoroki yelled. "This is how I will crush All Might's legacy." Without caring for the audience or their reception, Todoroki lifted Izuku up slightly and crushed his lips against Izuku's. At the boys' snogging, many of the girls started squealing in delight, while the boys cheered and whooped. Endeavor was obviously internally fuming at the fact that the perfect son he had created could even think of being in love with the same person that drove him crazy over the past 5 days. Not to mention, he was the legacy of All Might. However, he could not do much with Aizawa dragging him off, stating that they would have a great case against him for assaulting a minor with this scarily disturbing grin. Of course, not that Shoto cared about that. In fact, he was ecstatic that he had managed to piss off his father whilst also kissing. Oops. Maybe he should have asked permission. Shoto didn't really have to worry, since the bundle of sunshine seemed to enjoy the kiss, if his eyes being closed and a small smile was any indication. This week was one entertaining one. His father was kept away from him, his days being ruined one way or another. But the best part of it, Izuku had said yes to being his boyfriend. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, spam red hearts in comment box.